Good evening, Dandies. Welcome to Undetermined, the podcast.
But we are happy to have you on.
Yep.
You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Dr. N. That's what my students call me. I did come up with it.
Did you?
So I did give myself that name. People don't pronounce it correctly or spell it correctly, which was more annoying.
Right.
And it's not even my name. It's my soon-to-be ex-husband's name, which is a really weird thing to say. So Dr. N's easier.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of podcasts. One of them is the Forensic Files, and that was built off of a course that I taught about forensic psychology. And the other one is really similarly named to yours.
Yeah.
Called Undetermined, Deaths, Disappearances, and Mysteries.
Yeah. That's kind of why we reached out to you. We thought it was fun that we had the same name, and I guess this is kind of the podcast equivalent of a mashup.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we're excited to have you on, but we also enjoy your podcasts, both of them.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, really enjoying it. I've been binging Undetermined for, the last few days anyway.
Oh, gosh. Thanks.
Yep.
I enjoy making it. I keep getting a lot of comments from people being like, oh, I guess this podcast doesn't exist anymore. And I have to hold myself back from responding and saying, I'm sorry, I'm going through a life crisis. Bear with me.
Yeah.
And it's going to be Dr. X soon.
Well, I guess it would be Dr. Y, but that doesn't sound cool. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to change that. I might just keep that. I don't know.
Well, you can make up whatever it stands for.
Sure.
Dr. None Your Business.
Doctor, not your wife anymore.
There you go.
Which is definitely what I'm going to be now.
Dr. Not Bitter.
Yeah, right.
So how long have you been doing your podcast?
Yeah.
I started the Forensic Files at the beginning of 2020, where all hopes and dreams went to die. And it started great. And the class, I had never taught forensic psychology before. So that was like a fun learning experience for all of us. Don't tell them that. I did not tell my students that. So
we talked to so many of your students too.
Right?
That's going to be hard.
Right.
So I thought that it would be fun to have like something that they could listen to that was, less boring than a typical lecture. So it does kind of follow the content of the course in that way, but I tried to make it fun, but in a nerdy way.
Mm-hmm.
So if you listen to kind of the first, I don't know, like 13 or 14 episodes, you pretty much get the class. Like I cover all the topics. You could probably pass the final.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll have to see if I can get credit for that.
Right.
Right. Undetermined was something I came up with after lockdown when I was bored.
Mm-hmm.
And couldn't go anywhere bored. I guess I started it in the fall of 2020, so about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that ran through like January because there are only like 6. There aren't that many episodes.
There's 9.
But I did that one more as like a season, season by season, so that there could be like breaks. Because the Forensic Files is just like however many episodes it is. And I thought it would be nice to have more of a serialized, structured content, though that's like clearly going well because season 1 and I haven't done anything on season 2.
It's hard to keep it going sometimes. It's not like any of us that this is like a full-time job. It's just something that, hopefully everybody's enjoying. Right? And that's the point of doing it. But it doesn't have to be something that you like dedicate all your time or sanity to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're producing your own music with it as well. And of course, it's structured differently from ours because we called our show Undetermined because we don't know where it's going to go.
We have no idea where we're going or what we're doing.
Right. So yours is in a much more clinical sense, but it still talks about things that, like the paranormal or cryptids or, other sorts of mysteries and, not just the clinically undetermined cause of death. So what's been your, how did you go from just forensics into covering that wide of a different a bunch of different categories of unexplained things.
That's a great question. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I have like a million that I have saved to my phone. So sometimes I'll just shuffle to get to new things. And
Right.
a lot of them ended up being like paranormal type podcasts because those are just really cool to listen to.
Yeah, they're fun.
One of my absolute favorite podcasts is called Real Life Ghost Stories. Shout out to them.
Mm-hmm.
Emma from Real Life Ghost Stories was like really supportive when I told her I was like starting a podcast, and because I was a big fan of theirs. And so she's been like a good friend throughout the whole process. And I just really enjoyed that content.
Uh-huh.
And I thought it would be cool to kind of, spread out and not get too siloed in one topic or burn out on one thing.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we were getting stuck doing like the same sort of episode every week, the burnout would have already happened.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting. Like I have found like the podcast community is really pretty supportive of other podcasts. And I really like that about being a part of that community.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've made some really great friends, met some really cool, weird people like me. It's just nice. It's nice finding people who like to nerd out about really random things like poison and, things that would make you look kind of suspicious to a random person. Like,
Right.
Oh my God, have you heard of aqua tofana? Can we talk about it? And they're like, what is wrong with you?
Right.
No, I want to talk about this now. Tell me more.
Oh, aqua tofana?
Huh?
I feel like I have to give credit to Bailey Sarian for making that really famous. Not that other podcasts haven't covered it, but she does that like makeup mystery Monday YouTube. She has a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
And she just decided to talk about random murders while she was doing her makeup. It is fascinating. Highly recommend, 10 out of 10. But she became obsessed with this lady who is making this makeup, and she called it aqua tofana. And it was just poison in disguise. So these women would go in, and this is like, what, the 1800s or something?
Oh, okay.
They go into the shop and they order the aqua tofana. And it's just, they can poison their husbands without looking suspicious.
Oh.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's relieving to hear it wasn't like last week.
No.
Okay.
No, I guess this lady who made it, her whole thing was trying to help women get out of, abusive and controlling relationships. And at that time, divorce was not an option.
Right. That's sad to say, but yeah, I could see that being as like the last resort.
Yeah. So it was like, well, better kill him.
Wow.
Yeah. Just fascinating.
It is. I'm going to have to look more into that.
Yeah. My regular friends will not talk to me about that.
What's been kind of your favorite avenue that you've gone down with Undetermined in particular? Because I mean, like I say, you covered everything from, I listened to an episode about Lake Tahoe monster and other episodes about just, disappearances that are unexplained and deaths of celebrities, things like that. Which one, tickles you more than any other?
I kind of like, for some reason, and I have a running list of cases I want to talk about. And for some reason, I have a lot more mysterious disappearances than any other topics.
Yeah.
So I kind of have to sparse them out so it's not just a bunch of missing people.
Right.
But yeah, it's just the most thought-provoking, I guess, because there are so many things that could happen. And there's so many places they could be.
Yeah.
And it keeps me up at night. To be honest, thinking about some of these cases.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of mystery out there. And I know we've kind of conversed in emails and stuff, how common that really is. Like anywhere you go, there's some big mystery of somebody disappearing.
Oh, yeah.
Anywhere in the country or the world.
Yeah. My wife and I were talking about that. Just that every community, it seems like, has one of these, has a story like this. I talked about the case of the Springfield 3 I mentioned, and that happened when Matt and I were younger, living in Springfield, Missouri. We had the Ryan Ferguson case here in Columbia, Missouri. Pretty famous one with the Innocence Project and Ken Heitholt's murder. Still unsolved then, I guess. But, it's real pervasive.
Yeah, it's kind of scary too, because you think, oh God, what if something happened to me and no one ever figured it out? And I'm just like sitting there
Yeah.
being a ghost, screaming at people like, this person killed me.
Right.
Right.
And no one can hear you. That's my worst fear.
Yeah.
That's a pretty legitimate fear. Of course, we can also talk about, do ghosts exist? That sort of thing. And afterlife. And I know you've brought up, reincarnation was something that I think all of us find interesting.
Yeah.
But just that idea that we go on in some manner.
Yeah, it's interesting to read about all of those hypotheses and what people believe, because I didn't grow up religious at all. I grew up in the South, but my parents were from Ohio, so I was pretty neutral in the religion aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So it is interesting to think about just purely from an atheistic point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, one thing that's really interesting about the podcast, or about the way you do it too, is that you've got that psychological approach to it, how the psychology affects the community. I like how you said in one episode, how we're not going to do any victim shaming, which happens a lot.
It does.
And I think it's kind of strange and funny how I even catch myself doing it in a lot of those cases where it's like, I want to explain it away.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just there to be a cut and dried answer, because that fear of the unknown, of just, the fact that when we clear somebody like Ryan Ferguson, everybody knows in the back of everybody's mind that means there's a killer still out there. Or, somebody hasn't, maybe they went to prison for something else.
Right.
But, that one's unanswered for. That's a terrifying thing. Any one particular disappearance case that stands out to you as either like the most bizarre or just the most intriguing to you?
Probably, I immediately had an answer, so this is what I'm going to say.
Okay.
Because it is such a weird case that's never been solved. And it's on my list to do probably in the next season. I haven't compiled any of that formal writing, but I have listened to pretty much every podcast episode that ever existed on this girl.
Okay.
Her name was Maura Murray.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And she disappeared. There's a whole podcast. It used to be called Missing Maura Murray. And I think they just renamed it to Missing because they cover other cases now, but they covered just her case for a few years.
Oh, wow.
And they're at all those crime con conferences and stuff. They've become pretty prolific in that area of podcasting. But she went missing in February of 2004, I believe. And she was driving up near the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
Okay.
She was going to Amherst to college, and she was driving up there for some unknown reason.
Mm-hmm.
And her car was found kind of on the side of the road. It looked like it had been snowing and, New Hampshire. And
Right.
I lived in Connecticut for a while, so I've actually been on this road before, so it was just a little bit more fascinating for me.
Sure.
So I was like, I know exactly where this is because it is pretty much as close to a 90-degree turn in the road as you can get without a stop sign. And it kind of looked like she came up on it too fast and spun out or went into a snowbank. Or there's a lot of controversy about how her car ended up where, on the side of the road. People argue about it on Reddit constantly. It's very annoying. But her car's found, and she's nowhere to be found. And I guess the last person that anyone knows of who saw her alive was a bus driver who lived up the street. He was driving by, stopped to see if she needed help. She said no. Was, obviously kind of who are you? What do you want? So he said, well, do you need me to call the police? I can go to the house and get on the phone because there's no cell reception. Or it was pretty bad at the time. And she was like, no, don't call the police. This was his account, right? He said he drove up to his house, called the police. And he said they were there within 10 minutes, less than that.
Okay.
So within a very short amount of time, she disappeared without a trace. They never found any definitive kind of evidence of whether she got in another car, whether she ran out down the road or into the woods. Nothing was ever found. Ever. How do you just disappear? here.
They just vanish. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a strange one. That's a tight window. That's a really tight window of time.
Yeah, it is very bizarre. And a lot of the details are kind of fuzzy because people don't really know what was going on, why she was going out there. She was having some personal issues, but the extent of them is also kind of blurry.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I lived in Connecticut, I drove on roads like that all the time and by myself. And it's kind of scary to think of like, what would happen if I ran off the road and didn't have cell reception and someone was like, oh, can I help you? It's like, no.
Yeah.
What would I do? I don't know. Would I disappear forever? Who knows?
That's true. Yeah, I can recall one time I had a car breakdown in rural Missouri out in the middle of nowhere. And Matt can recall I lived in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But this car broke down. I ended up walking about a mile, walked up, knocked on somebody's door late at night.
Oh.
You know, I was a young, alternative-looking kid, about 19, 20 years old, you know, knocking on the door of somebody's house at midnight. I was like, can I use your phone? My car broke down. They're like, no. Lock the door. You know, I turned around my back to my car, but I was like, you know, for about 5 minutes, I was like, oh, you know, really irritated. I was like, yeah. And then I was like thinking about it later. It's like, I probably wouldn't have let me in either.
Right.
That sounds like a really likely story.
Yeah.
You know, for some roving axe murderer. But luckily, I just kept walking and found another phone. But
I'm really stupid on the other end of it. I really am. I really haven't had those opportunities since I had a family, and maybe I'm thankful for that. But I'm really good at picking up random people. Like if it looks like they're in a bad spot, I'll just be like, oh, I want to help them.
Right.
And I have done some really stupid shit
In retrospect.
in that capacity. This is okay. This is a funny story. I picked up a prostitute once.
Oh, no.
I didn't know I was doing it.
Well, you might want to rephrase that. Like you gave a prostitute a ride.
I'll explain the story.
Okay.
So this was like middle of July. It was hot, and I got this hankering for ice cream. I was just like, ice cream sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
So I hop in the car, and I'm driving through town, and it's just like blazing hot. And I see this, you know, slightly older woman that looks like she's really having a hard time standing on the corner of the street, and it's the middle of the day, right? And she's waving at me, and I'm like, it is so hot, and she looks like she's having a hard time. Okay, yeah, sure. Right? I'm going to give her a ride, and I let her in the car, and she's, oh, thank you. Oh, my friend lives down this way, if you can take, okay, cool. And like halfway through the drive, she runs her fingers through my hair and says, you ever like to get into trouble? And I'm just like, no. What? Holy no.
I just wanted some ice cream.
I just wanted ice cream. I thought I was helping an old lady.
Oh God.
Oh no.
That was not quite what I meant to, and you know, ill-advised probably that I did that. I've done worse though. I picked up a dude once, and I was like 16, 17 at the time, and I'm driving down the street, and there's this dude that's just walking, and he flags me down, and he is like covered in blood.
What?
I know. He's like covered in blood. And this was like long before like cell phones were a thing. Everybody had it. And I was like, holy shit, this dude needs help. Right. So I pull over, and I let the guy in the car. He's like, oh, thank you. And I'm thinking he's like, can you get me to the hospital? And I'm going to be like, yes, sir. We can get you to the hospital. He's like, yeah, me and my buddy got in a fight today. Jesus Christ.
Oh no.
I was going to ask, do you think you ever picked up a serial killer?
I may have that day. He may have been fresh from the scene. I don't know.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
And then there was an instance where it was like, and this one didn't go badly, but I pulled over. There was a girl. It was in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, and this girl was there with her flashers on, and I again was just like, I want to check on them, right? Mm-hmm. And I was at least like aware enough to go, okay, I'm not a small dude. It's the middle of the night. This can look a little weird. And it was again before like cell phones, everybody had one.
Right.
So I was just like, hey, look, I'm not going to try anything. I promise. This just looks like a bad situation. Can if you trust me enough, you're welcome to get a ride from me. If not, if you give me a phone number, I'm happy to go call somebody for you. Right? And that worked out. And she ended up was like, okay, I'm nervous, but I'm going to trust you. So I gave her a ride and didn't kill her.
Oh,
so that was good.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you clarified that.
No harm came. I just took her to the next town and dropped her off.
Wow. Yeah.
On one hand, I'm like, okay, that's not a great plan, but maybe on the other hand, I'm just like, I'm not good at like leaving someone in trouble alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Makes you wonder how many people maybe you picked up and that might be a missing persons now, and you'd have no idea that you were the last person
Right.
to see them. Yeah.
I'm like prime suspect.
Could be.
Was last seen in a brown Toyota.
Right. With a man eating ice cream. And another man covered in blood.
Sometimes I wonder, just because DNA technology is so advanced and you can pick up trace DNA from pretty much anything. I like to make the joke in my class where I jump up and touch the top frame of the door, somewhere where you wouldn't normally expect a fingerprint or DNA to be.
Mm-hmm.
And they might not clean very well.
Right.
And I have to jump because I'm short. So I do that and I say, look, my fingerprint and my DNA are up there. So if someone ends up being killed in this room, today, tomorrow, 3 years from now, my DNA will probably still be there.
Yeah.
My fingerprint will probably still be there unless someone scrubs it off, which I doubt they would.
Right.
They all make this face like, what the fuck? And I was like, it's fine. It's just, it's nice because you can pick up a lot of things you wouldn't normally be able to pick up, but you're also picking up a lot of noise at the same time.
Right.
And I wonder sometimes if like some of our DNA might be sitting in a database that was collected somewhere that I had been where someone was killed.
Uh-oh.
And they just can't account for it because I've never been arrested. So it's just interesting to think about that. It's kind of scary, actually.
Yeah. Sorry, you dropped out there for just a second.
I saw a little thing, it blipped up.
Gremlins, those Halloween gremlins.
Yep.
Yeah. What it is.
I was just checking the baseball game real fast.
Oh, sure.
Who's your team?
Oh, Atlanta. 100%. Born and raised.
Oh, right on.
You said you were from the South.
Yeah. I'm from that South.
Yeah, I like Atlanta.
Yeah. It's great. I really enjoyed growing up there.
Well, we're from Southern Missouri. Well, I guess John's originally from Illinois, but I'm from Southern Missouri. So there's definitely where I'm Ozarkian, so we get some of that Southern culture.
Yeah.
Too. Was that weird for your parents?
Atlanta is like really a mixed bag, and I don't have much of an accent. I also kind of pick up accents from people I hang out with, so I talk more like where I live now, but I never had much of a Southern twang.
Yeah.
Because no one I knew had one. Everybody around where I lived were transplants.
Mm.
From all over the place, and none of my friends had accents, and it just, I have to prove that I'm from there sometimes. You're like, no way.
Yeah.
Like, why would I lie about that? Such a weird thing to lie about.
No, I get it. I have similar things. Like, people don't assume I am from deep Southern Missouri. I come from a long line of hillbillies.
Oh, yeah.
I can say that because I am one. It's true.
Right. Yeah.
Like, literally, my dad was born in a chicken coop. I'm not even making this up.
Wow.
Right? My great-grandmother, we called her Granny Grunt, and she liked to go by Granny Grunt, lived in a trailer, chewed Red Man. She had a spit cup sitting in her trailer next to her recliner. I did not like giving Granny Grunt kisses
Ew.
as a child.
I can't imagine why.
So I'm a fucking hillbilly.
Yeah, you are. I come
If
from
you
a lot
met
of
some of my
hillbillies,
family,
too.
you would be like, "Oh,
I mean, man, my family is like off the rails.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the one side that is just, we don't talk.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah." I argue with mine a lot these days because it's just that divide's getting farther and farther, and that bubble's getting smaller, I guess, in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the unwillingness, like this is the way everybody else sees it around here, and I'm just going to go along with that. We don't trust you, big city thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
And it scares me a lot.
Yeah, it is terrifying.
Yeah. I just don't talk to a lot of those people
Yeah.
anymore. I just give it up. It's sad. I mean, they're my family, but it's, yeah, I just can't. With some of that narrative. That's sad. Should we get back to DNA? No.
DNA.
DNA.
Yeah. Where did I cut out in my weird rant about DNA?
The demonstration of jumping up and touching the top of the door jamb.
Yeah. So it makes me like, I have anxiety, as most millennials do, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Just deep-seated, totally irrational anxiety that my DNA sits in some random database because it's been collected during a murder investigation somewhere that I have been in the last 33 years.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And they just have never been able to rule it out or identify it because my DNA is not
Mm-hmm.
in a database. Now my fingerprints are
Right.
not because I've been arrested, but because I have a government ID, like low level security clearance. I'm not fancy, but you have to have some sort of entry level clearance to work with the data I work with. So I've been fingerprinted.
Mm-hmm. I've been fingerprinted for so many jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite a few. But yeah, DNA, it's one thing I've always said about it a lot of people do get exonerated by it, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds have been. But, I always say if they have to wear those suits to collect it, that just goes to show how easily it's shed everywhere,
Yeah.
And, and just because somebody was somewhere doesn't mean they did the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's another big problem with it.
Oh, there are so many problems. And I have this great book. Is it on the shelf next to me? It is not. I looked over thinking it might be there. I think it's called Inside the Cell.
Mm-hmm.
It's really technical, so it's not something I, tell people to go read for a good time.
Right.
It's good. It's good to read for like an educational and sort of sad time about the state. If you want to become more disillusioned by the way the government works, read this book. It kind of opened my eyes to, because I had no idea how like any of that forensic analysis was done, even because I failed chemistry in high school, so it's not like I have any idea how any of that works.
Right.
But it was just interesting to find out how like deeply flawed it all is. And just because you have more technology and you are capable of detecting smaller and smaller snippets of DNA, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing a better job.
Right.
It doesn't always equate to being a better thing or contributing to better outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole lot of subjectivity, it turns out, in analyzing and identifying strands of DNA from what you collect, because getting a pure sample, especially from a crime scene, that's like a unicorn. That doesn't happen unless you're the only one there.
Huh.
And you're always going to have some mixed DNA, and parsing that out, especially when you don't have full profiles, if you're working with really limited samples of DNA, parsing it out becomes this guessing game almost. And a lot of the people doing it aren't very good at it.
Right.
They're either not trained very well, they're not experienced. It's not like a glamorous job that you get paid a lot to do. There's this one lady who's just, she's just out of control. Like, she was implicated in over 30 cases of testifying that the DNA matched a certain person when there was really no evidence of that. It's really hard to know if she's just completely incompetent or if she was lying on purpose, you know, to help the police.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy, especially when things aren't double blind.
Right.
It's easy to be, you know, psychologically conditioned to find the answer that you think they want you to find.
Right.
We want to help. We want to find the killer. We want to help, you know, solve the case kind of mentality. And we want to be a team player.
Yeah.
Confirmation bias. It's something I talk about a lot.
Right. Sometimes we rely a little bit too much on the whole Occam's razor idea, right? That the simplest solution is generally the right one. That's not always the case in some of these things.
No.
Right? Just because that makes the most sense doesn't mean that's how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Which also, you know, you hit on an idea I just had while we were talking. What if let's just all we'll do a total mashup podcast just called Disillusioned, where we can talk about shit that is just fucked up and just how like disappointing the system actually is.
Right.
Like that's stuff that John and I like talking about anyway.
How much time do you have?
Right.
Because it would take hours.
We've got quite a bit. Well, yeah, I mean, we wanted it from your perspective, you know, somebody who's researched this stuff. I mean, not just a couple of, you know, morose old guys who are like grumpy and, you know.
Even though that's true.
Yeah, definitely true. But I don't know, you know, wouldn't call myself an expert on, you know, I just like saying things were screwed up, man. You know.
But I think a lot of things are like that, though. Like when we find out how the sausage is made, it's like a letdown.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We expect there to be more to it. And I found that, like, and I'm guessing you have too, just working like in the mental health field. How many people expect, oh, you're a therapist? Well, you know how to fix someone's brain. No, I don't. I promise you, I do not know how to fix your brain.
Oh, my God. Do they ask if you're reading their mind? That's my favorite. Oh my God, what am I thinking? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like, why would I know that?
I'm not psychic. I don't have, and I've told people straight up before, and like, my job does not come with like any powers or a magic wand.
No.
Right? I am here to listen and help you find the best way through this together. But I don't have any special abilities. I'm sorry if you had that impression.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting too. I was reading, well, I read your bio, and what is your doctorate in? If you could tell me, and I'll ask you if I've got this right.
Yeah, it's in industrial and organizational psychology, which is a really fancy way of saying the psychology of work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's kind of what I gleaned from it, just kind of Wikipediaing it.
Yeah, well, there you go. You've made it further than 99% of people who just look at me with complete dissatisfaction, like, what the hell? And then they still ask me if I'm reading their mind. And I'm like, what? Why?
Why, yes, I am.
Do you know what my job is? And I'm like, I fucking don't. Like,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
What's the biggest contributor to people hating their jobs? What do you think, or what have you found?
Ooh, why do people hate their jobs now or pre-pandemic? Because those are different answers.
Both.
They're both. I'd say they're different questions, but
yeah,
you can answer both. Yeah.
The way we work, and I might be like plagiarizing someone's paper because I've been reading a lot about this, but the entire way that we work is totally different now than it was before. And anyone, especially, and I'm just mostly jabbing at CEOs who have no idea what they're doing any of the time.
Yes.
They got to be out of their minds if they think we can just go back to normal.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I work for a company that actually, my company was bought by another company last year. So we're transitioning to this new larger company. And they have a whole like group of IO psychologists. So they understand. And they're actually doing a pretty decent job given the circumstances.
Right.
But for the most part, no one has any idea what's going on right now. The way we approach work is totally different now. What we're willing to deal with is basically much less bullshit.
Right.
People are just fed up.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to work anywhere, anytime, you know, outside of the limitations of other obligations like family or children. And it's easier to leave. I think people felt a lot of like continuance commitment, or maybe felt bound to a specific place. Like, oh, I can't leave because I can't move, or I can only do this in an office and I don't want to live there, something like that. And it's very different now. So someone coined it like the great resignation phase, and we're in it.
That. Yeah.
So everybody's leaving my company, and I'm like reading all these articles, and it's like people are dropping like hotcakes.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting fed up with the system, and we're gonna go do what we want. I'm like, yeah, but then I'm the only one left doing 10 people's job,
Right.
So because I don't, as much as I would love to leave, it doesn't make sense right now because I'm in a pretty good situation.
Yeah.
Considering that I hate what I do. I'm in a pretty good like schedule situation, and starting a new job is terrifying to me.
Yeah.
At this point, so I'm not going to leave, but so many people are, and it's happening everywhere. And my manager is like completely out of touch.
Yeah.
Because I tried to talk to him about it the other day. I said, I think this is an issue that we should think about. And he's like, it's not a big deal. People leave all the time. And I'm like,
what did you hire me for?
2 VPs, 4 analysts, and 3 senior researchers left in the last 3 months.
Wow.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing it. I had a situation, and I'm trying to think of how I can word this where I'm not like breaching anything in saying it, but I spoke with somebody who worked in a very, especially during these times, very important job for people to be maintaining. And it's definitely something where there's a high degree of burnout and just kind of saying, I don't know how much longer I can do it. And on my end of it, I'm saying, do what you need to do. You got to take care of you. And that's the advice I would give to anybody. It was like, self-care is so important.
Yeah.
Jobs can come or go. You've got to take care of yourself. Right? And that's my job. And I believe that. But in the back of my head, I'm like, fuck, we don't need to lose any more of you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough spot to be in sometimes, just even on the other side of that.
Yeah. That's really interesting, just to how it's just changing the landscape of everything, and how, so many things are becoming obsolete, or, from the pandemic, a lot of these businesses are going to figure out ways that they saved money, and they're not going to go back to spending it. Why would they? If they're in the business for profit? I always wondered about the future of things like high-rise office buildings that occupied by so many people. It's like they're going to have to convert them to housing.
Yeah.
Or something, the age of the skyscraper being over is a potential thing. And then are we holding on to that just like we do, like the kind of the analogy of the penny? It actually costs more than a penny to make a penny.
Right.
But Americans are just so stuck in using pennies that we won't round things up or down to a nickel.
And other countries totally do that, right? They just like, okay, we're going to the nickel.
Yeah. Right. It's an obsolete currency.
We're a stubborn lot.
Yeah.
We really are. Something else, though, that you were kind of touching on that I think is kind of interesting is like the higher ups, right? You get the executives, the CEOs, the people, and us, we have like this, built-in idea that they are more special, or they know more, or they have got some great insights, or they're just brilliant people in general, or have worked really hard. And sometimes no. And there's been studies about this, that really it's as much luck as it is anything on whether somebody is successful or not. If you want a great example, look at Mike Lindell, right? That guy is fucking nuts, and he's an idiot. And by the way, MyPillow, have you ever tried it? They kind of suck.
Yeah, I don't care for them.
I've had way better pillows. I've squeezed them. I'm just like, well, no, I don't want to put my head on that shit.
Yeah,
This
I don't
is like an anti-ad.
Right? Yeah, it kind of is. Well, and he's not. And now he's just like,
he's not a sponsor. I mean,
right? Yeah, sponsored by MyPillow. No.
Sponsored by someone who wants us to trash MyPillow.
We should find a different pillow company. That's a good idea.
Right? But I mean, just look at what he's doing and the things that he's saying out there right now. It's just like complete conspiracy theory stuff. The election was stolen. I'm going to prove it. No, well, I can't prove it this week. I'll do it next week. Well, guess what? Haven't quite got there. The liberals have hacked us. So I can't prove it this week either. But we're going to get there, people. And we're going to reinstate Trump on this date. Well, it's not going to be on this date anymore. But that guy's like a billionaire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like the people who predict the end of the world. The math's off a little bit.
The internet's a magical place that can make the dumbest person absolutely insanely rich for no reason.
Yeah.
I just wish I could figure out that algorithm.
I do too. I wish I owned a 13-year-old pug that could predict what kind of day I'm going to have. And I'm gonna say it, I'm having a bones day. So anybody who follows that adorable pug Noodle on the TikTok, that's what that reference is for. It's great. I mean, this guy became so famous because he would just pick his old dog up every morning and be like, let's see if he has bones today. And basically, like, will he stand up or will he fall back over? And then he'll be like, if Noodle stands up, he's like, it's a bones day. It's going to be great. You can do the thing. Get out of bed. Motivation station. If Noodle falls down, he's like, it's a no bones day. Take care of yourself. Sleep.
That's hilarious.
Self-care. And every day, this dog is predicting, and giving advice to people. He was on the Today Show. What?
How does that?
It's the weirdest stuff becomes popular. And I mean, TikTok is a very strange place.
Yeah,
it is. TikTok scares me and concerns me. And
I was concerned at the beginning when it was, I have a neighbor with a 10-year-old and she was obsessed with it. And I thought nothing cool is ever worth being obsessed over by a 10-year-old. Right. So I was very against it. And at that point, a couple of years ago, I was just dancing and it was stupid. Like, it honestly was not worth my time. And then all the rest of us, the elders, came in. Right. And there's just, there are curated TikTok rabbit holes you can go down. I love the conspiracy theory ones. Mm-hmm. They're fascinating. And like, there's all these other like random, like you can go through divorce talk where I listen to other people complain about their divorce. It's great. It's cathartic. I'm like, I know exactly what you're going through. This is wonderful. Or just like cute animals. You can find your thing. Just like any other social media.
Yeah. My experience with it, and I've said this before, is from what I've seen of it, is it brings out like the inner old man, the get off my lawn guy. Right. Like, I just want to take a hose to most of the people that I'm seeing on TikTok. Oh my God, no, this is.
Yeah. I think I haven't curated it yet, is the problem.
It takes a while.
Yeah. I've dipped my toe in. And as a result, and that's the thing that's weird about it, is immediately starts blasting you with suggestions just based on like one or two frames that you see and say, oh, that might be something interesting. And then it's really not.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you get flooded with, and that intimidates me. That it's like,
yeah,
it's just something else I have to form and I have to mold it and I have to make it,
Yeah, it takes work, but it pays off because now when I go on, I don't have to wade through the bullshit. This is exactly what I want to see right now.
You got the algorithms working for you because, like, if I see like one more cute animal filter where people are stars twinkling around them and shit. I'm just automatically, I'm like, no.
I will say the one, it knew, I don't know, my phone's listening to me all the time probably, but it knew I had just finished Squid Games.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was so good.
So there's the filter where you can, it's like your head is on a little runner and it's got this little creepy baby doll doing the little thing.
Mm-hmm.
The first game from the first episode.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to move your mouth to move your little avatar, and then you have to freeze when it turns around. And
Red light.
every video that people have made is the funniest thing I've ever seen. And they have millions of views because they figure it out really fast and they just go, ah! or they'll be talking. They're like, I don't understand what and then they'll just stop talking because they're like, oh shit. And they'll be like,
See, now that's kind of clever. That's fun. Yeah. I like that.
That's a fun time. I watched probably 50 of those last night.
Wow.
That's the problem.
I had an idea. This is pretty inappropriate, but I amused myself with it. I think it's borderline. Like, my end of it isn't so bad, but the other side of it, I mean, the guy got voted president after he said it, right? So we already know what I'm talking about. Grab him by the you-know-what. Right? So I thought it would be really funny. You remember, like, you know, the Pokemon Go, where everybody's out there trying to catch Pokemon? I thought it would be really funny to have, like, the Trump version of that, and it's just an orange guy going around trying to grab cats. Gotta grab them all.
Oh, no.
Yeah. No.
And it'd just be like cats. You're just on the lookout for cats on your phone.
Yeah. Maybe like a heads-up display at the top of the phone that's just like an orange waft of hair, you know, that moves as you move, or like controlled by wind. Yeah. Whichever direction you're in.
Oh, jeez. That's great.
Yeah. Little isms as quotes as you're walking. Oh, yeah, that'd be pretty fun. I'd pay $1 for that. I would.
Right. That's where my head goes.
Nice.
And that's why our show is called
Really ran the gamut.
I really did.
We had a couple user questions. I don't know if you know anything about these cases. Matt asked just friends of the show and whatnot what they want to. Oh, who was it? Kevin Seal asking where Shelley Miscavige is.
Oh, God.
And that's a whole Scientology thing.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if you looked into that at all. Like, she's not been seen in public or anything since 2007 or something.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that, which I don't understand how I hadn't heard of that before.
Right.
Because I talk about in one of my classes, one of the topics is cults.
Uh-huh.
And I talk about Scientology because it is a cult.
Oh, absolutely.
I agree.
I used to say no offense, but I mean full offense now. But in all of my, research about it and its cult-like behavior, I didn't come across her disappearance. It's really weird.
Well, I guess Leah Remini, who's done that show and everything on Scientology and big anti-Scientologist, I guess she filed like even a missing persons report on her with the LAPD. Gosh, I read about it earlier. I don't know if I remember all the days, something like, but yeah, last seen in public, like 2007. I think a couple of people on police force says she's fine. She just doesn't want to be seen or heard from, or.
Yeah, I read that.
Others are saying like, no, but she just hasn't been, like, nobody's got a visual confirmation on her.
Yeah. The part where, they opened an investigation and quickly closed it and the police said, oh, there's nothing to worry about here. I'm like, suspicious.
Right.
I'm like, well, I don't believe you.
Right. What if she's doing like witness relocation type shit?
Oh.
Right. She just spilled the beans on a bunch of stuff.
Or the police who did say that are Scientologists and
right.
Paid off.
Oh, no, she's in hiding.
Yeah, I got the impression that they were probably just paid off.
Right.
Probably. Some of that, Tom Cruise money coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All it'll take, just, one crappy mummy movie to make somebody disappear.
Wow.
But yeah, Other questions were about, was it Randy Leach,
Randy Leach, yeah, and that's
Kansas?
Yeah, that was a weird one.
yeah, the theories that it was Satanist. But that part I get it because I grew up again around those kinds of people in that kind of community, and really they love to like go straight to it was Satanists.
Well, there was that one kid who had been abducted and said by Satanists and saw like a body hanging or whatever, and that's where that kind of idea came from, but the body didn't match the description of the kid. So that to me is kind of like and I just read when I looked it up, I saw an article from earlier this year maybe where they had found a car in the river where they thought it was most likely that he could have driven the car off a bridge that doesn't exist anymore, apparently.
Yeah.
Into this river, and they excavated this car, and it wasn't the same make or model or anything like that, but that's kind of the biggest lead that they'd had pretty much ever.
Right. And honestly, the car thing did kind of make me think, okay, there's something fishy going on here, because there's also, he had like I can't remember, some really cool sports car or muscle car that no teenage boy in that part of the country would leave that car alone. It was like getting worked on. If he's going to bail or do something, he's taking that car with him.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way he's still alive, because that car was probably his baby. I mean, that's all 17-year-old boys care about, right?
Yeah, and other inappropriate things, but yeah.
That too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many places people could go. People go missing, or, bodies can disappear too. I mean, I think people really underestimate that. Everybody, I mean, there's plenty of people out there and know people with a really, really hot furnace or a concrete company.
Right. There's a part of me that's like, I could get away with it if I really wanted to, just because it seems like there are lots of different ways to totally get rid of the evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an awful thing to say, but there's a part of it.
It is.
It seems that way, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a forensics person, but I'm like, if I just got rid of the evidence and I really didn't have any reason to be associated with any of these things, being a hitman doesn't seem like it'd be that hard.
Right. Being one of or like being a random serial killer. And that's why I think it's so hard to connect some of those. Like, there have been some that people think exist.
Right.
But there's no real rhyme or reason to it. And there's just a bunch of dead people, and they're like, well, I don't, they're kind of similar, but they're not. But are they connected? Maybe.
Yeah.
It seems really easy to get away with something like that.
Yeah.
And especially, I mean, after all the true crime that I listen to,
yeah,
I think if it came down to it, I could probably handle it. But I also live near a large body of water, and that's kind of notorious for having a lot of dead bodies in it. It's kind of a running joke in town. So, yeah.
You ever walked across the Golden Gate Bridge? I have done that. It is like loaded, like every so many
rails or posts,
whatever you want to get. Yeah, it beams, right? There's a phone. Hey, if you're feeling suicidal, why don't you pick this up? It's scary.
Well, in your research, or just what you've looked into, what do you think that hard number is? I think a lot of people think that just tons of murders get solved. And, with, like you say, advances in technology, things like that. I mean, certainly more do get solved, I think, nowadays than they used to. But, if you had to, like, give a percentage, or if you, I mean, what do you think? Are we fooling ourselves? Or is there a lot of people getting away with murder?
I don't remember the number. I remember reading a number within the last couple of years that did estimate that. I don't remember what it was. I think it was around 20 or 30%. Which is not a small amount.
No.
Wow. That's too high for me.
That is too high.
There are a lot of missing people who just never resurfaced.
There are.
And is it really that easy to disappear?
I don't
know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've never tried.
I've never tried either. And I think kind of will tie in previous conversation where that assumed credibility that we give people kind of comes into play. And it's almost like a good preventative measure. Oh, the police are really good at figuring this stuff out. They're going to CSI everybody. And, you'll be busted for sure if you do that. And having that fear of that being a possibility probably reduces some crime.
Sure.
I'd like to think that that's not the only reason people don't murder each other.
Right. No. I don't think I was just tying those 2 points together.
Yeah.
Like, we do assume that people have more competence than they actually do. And sometimes having that assumption is a benefit.
Well, yeah. I mean, how else do you sleep at night?
Right. Yeah. That. And it helps us stay more accountable, I think.
Right.
I could get caught. I'll probably get caught.
Yeah. Do you think it's changed just in your doing the podcast and the research? Do you think it's changed your kind of worldview on that? Are you more careful now than you were before? Are you more, things you're more worried about? Or
I definitely did a lot of stupid shit when I was younger.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like just really careless kind of things that are sort of commonplace now, especially for women.
Mm-hmm.
Not letting your friends kind of wander off, making sure everyone's accounted for.
Yeah.
Not, if you're alone, not getting too drunk, kind of that kind of stuff. And
Right.
I mean, in college, I was kind of a mess. So in our friend group, the running joke is, it's a wonder you didn't get murdered or kidnapped. Like,
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that.
That's hilarious.
Like, But nowadays, I feel like there's so much more awareness and kind of support too of how to stay safe. And, a lot of that is sort of the burden of the victim, which we're trying to get away from, but
right.
It's a really touchy subject. And I can really see both sides to it. And it's a really tough thing. Like, I'm a little uncomfortable just as a guy having that conversation and saying, no, sometimes you don't need to go down a dark alley by yourself in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying that it's your fault if something bad happens. I don't think that.
Right.
Whoever does it is, but it is fucking stupid to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going out in the middle of the woods with someone you don't know, probably a bad idea.
Right.
Stuff like that. I try to balance, like making good, safe decisions of the things I can control, and then just being more aware of what's going on around me. I felt like I spent my entire 20s being completely unaware of everything that didn't have to do with me. I was just completely unaware.
Yeah.
And that's not very safe. And thankfully I lived in a safe place, but it's hard because at the end of the day, you can do everything right. You can follow all of the rules and all of the advice, and you can still be a victim of a crime.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's, kind of what I was trying to get at earlier was just that I think that's just in a lot of cases, I find myself doing that, when I hear about these cases. Oh, shouldn't have done that. Oh, well, yeah. There you go. That's good. But I think that's just to, like I say, to help it's more soothing to me than it is to, anybody else or anybody in the family or anything else like that, or even the person involved in the circumstance. It just allows me to dismiss it a lot easier. And we shouldn't be doing that,
Yeah, I really, really hate when like something bad happens to a kid and there's this pile on to blame the parents. Oh, what shitty parents. Yeah. And a lot of the time I can think of, like, as a parent, I'm amazed that my kid is still around.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have fucked up. There have been plenty of things that I was just like, ooh.
Sure.
I learned that lesson. Glad he's alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're an honest parent, that is something that you've dealt with. So to fucking pile on a parent who didn't get as lucky as you did is bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, twice, our oldest just thought it was hilarious. It was one summer to go out and just run away and hide in giant department stores.
No.
Right. Yeah. At 3, 4 years old, just find a chance when we weren't looking and disappear and, run and hide in the middle of a clothes rack somewhere. And yeah.
That's terrifying.
So you do the intercom call. Yeah. Then one time they had to do the intercom call and shut the store down and everything else.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
God.
horrible.
Yeah. Did it twice.
Now, there are definitely examples of people being straight up bad parents.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I didn't realize the gun I left sitting on the coffee table was loaded.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's bad parenting.
Sure.
That is definitely bad parenting.
Yeah.
But if your kid slips away in the grocery store, God, kids are slippery. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
They really are. And you'll feel bad and it scares the shit out of you.
Oh, yeah.
But that doesn't make you a bad parent.
I think people like to latch on to the mistakes they think other people make because it makes them feel at least like psychologically safer.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it's the more distance you can put between what happened to someone else and what you're capable of, like the better you're going to feel about it. Because if we all went, it's like a survival mechanism, probably. If we all went around thinking that any of this shit could happen to us at any point, we'd probably go crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, if we're really honest with ourselves, it feels good to feel superior.
True.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of stuff we're seeing right now comes from.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting a lot of that challenge of people that have felt superior in a lot of ways for a lot of things. And now the world's saying, no, you're not so superior. Get over yourselves. They're pushing back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And suddenly they feel like they're martyrs and victims. And like you haven't even gotten close to where these other people have been in terms of being marginalized. So get over yourselves and get over it. They don't want to hear it, though.
Yeah. I had a really good conversation about that topic. And I can't remember who I was talking to now, but it was a great conversation. Sorry, that person that I've forgotten your face and name. But it was kind of like just about like privilege and how it's hard to see, we don't wear privilege on our, clothes. Like you can't, it's not like we have a badge system for privilege.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of hard to tell like who starts out lower on the totem pole than you or higher.
Right.
And sometimes some things can look more unfair because someone else was given something you weren't.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, well, if it was fair, then I would get that too. And it's like, well, you started 3 prongs above Joe over here, buddy. Like, no,
Right.
It's not about fairness. It's about equity. And it's really hard to demonstrate that to people who aren't getting as much as someone else.
Right. You gave them $5 and you only gave me $1. You've only ever given me $1. Well, you got $1 100 times and I've given them the $5 one time. Get over yourself.
Yeah.
That's a weird example, but it made sense to me as I was saying it.
Right. And I think a lot of people equate, privilege with wealth, and not necessarily, they're not the same things at all.
Yeah.
And you can't really, like you say, you can't necessarily see it when you're in it because of things are just happening to you. And that's just how you live your life. I mean, if you don't know anything, you don't know that exists until it's taken away, and it probably never will be, like in the example of just how much easier it is for me to hail a taxi.
Mm.
You'll never know what it's like to be somebody else hailing that taxi, and because you will never be that other person, if they're a minority or anything else. It's something we need to be more cognizant of, I think. But it's hard to do. Very hard to do.
Yeah. And we all do it. We all do it to one degree or another. And if we got to be honest with ourselves about that. And we're not always going to be aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We've had the conversation before. 50 years from now, there are going to be things that we've talked about or that I've expressed or thought were okay that, we're going to look back and go, what the fuck were you thinking?
Right.
And I'm really curious about what those things are.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to know.
Right.
There are things that people were doing 100 years ago that were perfectly acceptable, that didn't look bad at all at that time. Nobody thought anything about it. And now we look at it and go, were they nuts?
Right.
Yeah. And it's really interesting for me. I kind of grew up on the cusp of the internet and technology coming up, and that weird spot of like kind of coming into adolescence without everything being recorded
Mhm.
forever, which
Thank
is
God.
great because
Yeah.
I've definitely done and said things that would get me canceled. I'm sure most of us have.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, it's very embarrassing, like, to think back on, in some of like my old diaries that still exist. I'm like, gotta burn this.
Right.
Not good.
No.
Or, you know, and it's just recently, even, you know, just opinions about stuff that I can't believe that I used to think that.
Yeah.
But it's weird to think about kids growing up these days where everything is documented so completely.
I know.
And nothing dies on the internet. It's always there. It's going to be there
Right.
forever.
We're going to have presidential candidates who, you know, eventually in the future, who like they're going to look back at their Twitch account
Right.
Yeah.
when they were
It's true.
when they were playing Minecraft at 10. You know.
Yeah. And like what kind of things you were saying on there. And
Right. That's weird.
my live journal from when I was, 14 is still online.
Mm-hmm.
It's still there.
Oh.
There is some problematic shit in that.
Was that also under Dr. N?
No.
Thank God.
No. It's
Where can we find this?
totally.
Shut the link out.
If you knew me back then, you would immediately know it was me. But people nowadays, sometimes I tell them and show them like a page from it, and they're like, "What the hell is that?"
Don't do
like,
that.
I was a little emo
Nice.
when I was that age, like very emo.
Yeah, those turn out to be the coolest kids, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, I had a lot of like existential dread as a child.
Yeah.
Like turning 10 gave me an existential crisis. I was like, I can't turn 10 because then I will have 2 digits in my age. And what do we do with that?
Right.
I had a full-on panic attack about it, and I didn't realize that that's what it was. And my friend had to smack me. She was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Like, as a 10-year-old, she shouldn't say that, but she's like, "What is shaking me? Like, what is wrong with you? It's just a number." I'm like, "But it means so much." It's like, how did a 10-year-old end up this messed up?
Yep.
Yeah. Most 10-year-olds are just like, I'm 10 now.
Yeah.
Right?
Mine just turned 12, and he was talking about, like, he had this, I'm basically a grown-up now. And I was like, what, dude?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's going to, maybe have an anxiety disorder when he's older. Congrats.
There you go.
You made it to tween. Yeah, that's it. You got a ways to go. And trust me, I wish you were closer sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's depressing to think about.
Yeah.
But hey, changing it up since it's Halloween weekend.
Oh.
Happy Halloween, everybody, on Sunday. This will probably be posted for that.
Mm-hmm.
But talking about the paranormal podcast, things like, is there any in particular, like cryptid or ghost story or anything, just flat out beyond the pale of crime investigation, that's, weirder than weird? That's kind of your favorite.
Or any of your own experiences.
Oh. So I love a good cryptid.
Uh-huh.
I've always been a little bit obsessed with Bigfoot. When I was in college, those like Bigfoot investigation docu-series type things were on television, were on cable.
Right.
I was obsessed.
It's squatchy out here.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. So I really enjoy that kind of cryptid, because that's probably, to me, Bigfoot is probably the most reasonable one to believe in, I guess. It seems the most logical to exist if they do.
Yeah.
I have not had an experience with Bigfoot. I can't say that I've ever been to the woods of the Pacific Northwest, though.
Right.
Maybe once, but not on purpose. I have had a weird ghost-ish experience.
Go on.
And I talked about this on another podcast once.
Okay.
It was just strange, because I had always really liked ghost stories and scary movies and all that stuff, and watching those the haunted series was also really popular when I started college. So part of me is like, oh, how much of this is implanted in my brain from watching too many haunted episodes? And
right.
And there are stories about the campus where I went to school that they tell you as a freshman. So you go in and they tell you all these stories, and then people, claim to see things, and it's like, well, how much of that is just priming?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. But I had not heard about the experience I had, and I didn't actually tell anyone. I kind of told my roommate, but she was high on meth, so she didn't remember.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable saying that because we're not friends anymore. She's never going to listen to that. I mean, like, good luck.
Wow.
Figure out. She's never going to listen to this. But I didn't tell anyone. And it wasn't until like a couple years ago, the college had like a series online where they were asking people about their ghost experiences with the school ghosts. And I was reading one, and I actually knew the girl. She had been in the class above me. And I thought, oh, well, I know this person. So I read her story, and I thought, well, that sounds oddly familiar. That's almost exactly what happened to me. We had never talked about it. We never discussed it. And it wasn't one of the, the big five is what they call them. The big five ghosts on campus.
Right.
So it was interesting to read that. And then I ended up telling the story on another podcast that I was like a little guest spot for their Patreon episodes. And I was like, well, it happened to someone else. So I guess I wasn't imagining it. I kind of thought that it was in my head for a while, but I was, I'll make it the short version because the long version is kind of long.
Okay.
But the short version is I was in my first semester at school and I was taking a music elective, just a basic kind of music theory. And they had these practice rooms in the music building in the basement. They were all in the basement. And it was an old chapel. So I was down there one night, and people were down there a lot of the time in the evenings practicing or doing work. It was like a Friday, so there weren't a whole lot of people around, and no one was down there. I was the only one. The lights were out in the hallway, so I knew no one had been down there in a while because they're automatic on a timer.
Right.
So I go down there. I just like pop into the first practice room. No big deal. I'm like tootling around, playing the piano, trying to do my homework. And at a certain point, I start hearing like this beautiful piano music. And I was like, oh, someone else came down here. And I thought, oh, I didn't hear anybody come through the door because I was right next to the outer door that goes upstairs. I was like, that's weird. The door's pretty loud.
Yeah.
But they could have come down the elevator, which is around the corner. And I thought, oh, they probably just came down the elevator because it was coming from the other end of the hallway. So I finished my work and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just go see who it is. Just curious because it was like a really great song and I didn't know what it was. I still don't. And I was like, I just can't place it. It's like I wanted to know what they were playing, and it. Sometimes I dream about it, and I'm like, God, I really want to know what that stupid song is. So I walk down the hallway and I can see a light on in the room at the end, and it wasn't on before. And I thought, oh, someone is here. And in my creepy way, I didn't want to scare them or distract them. So I the practice rooms had these like window panes,
right?
Like the little windows you can see in.
Yeah.
So I kind of like peered into this window.
Right.
Music stops.
Huh.
No one's in there. And I'm like,
Wow.
That's weird.
That is weird.
My first impression was like, oh, maybe they went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I was 18 and stupid. So I went to the bathroom. I checked everything. No one's there.
Yeah.
I used the bathroom all in there. Come back out, and the light in that room wasn't on anymore. And I was like, weird. I must have just missed them. Maybe they were like out of view when I looked in the room, coming up with all these reasons why it's not creepy. And it, at that point it's like 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
No one's around. I had a cell phone, but it was like in the days where like minutes and texts were limited and expensive.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's odd. So I'm walking back past the room and it's like really cold next to the door. And I'm like, oh, it's really chilly.
Probably left the window open.
Yeah, that's
Right.
I thought, oh, maybe someone left a window open because it was like October or November and it was kind of getting chilly. I was like, oh, that's weird. And I went back to my practice room and I was like, you know what? I should just leave. And that was the point where I was like, this is weird.
Yeah.
And I should just go. And I did. And I never signed up for another music course.
Wow.
Because there was a room with computers that had a specific software. It was really expensive, so you could only do advanced music theory on these computers, and they were all in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, there's absolutely no friggin' way I'm ever taking another class where I'm forced to be down here, because they would be there all night doing this homework. I was like, absolutely no way.
Wow.
So somebody else heard like mystery music playing?
Yeah, she said hers involved the elevator also from that building, which was interesting. She said the elevator would like just go down and open and no one would be on it. And it would go back up and come back down and no one would be in the building pressing the buttons. It would just do what it wanted.
Yeah.
And she said she had also heard this music she could not identify, but that it was really pretty. She's like, it really bothers me because it's like, I really want to know what that song is. I'm like, shut up.
Oh, that is weird.
Me too.
That is strange.
Do you remember like what it sounded like?
Yeah, you play piano. I mean, could you recreate it if you tried, or at least some of the notes and sound hound it or something? And
I think I did try something like that. I think because I was freaking out to my roommate and, trying to sing it for her. And she's like, what is wrong with you? She's high out of her mind. So she's like, you're high. I was like, I'm not high. You're high.
No, you're high.
So maybe at the time, if I had been more, I don't know, like together with my thoughts,
right,
I probably could have.
Yeah, it's not like you were listening for it or, trying to hear it.
No. Yeah, sometimes I'll have dreams about it.
Weird.
But I always like forget when I wake up. It's really weird because I usually remember my dreams and I write a lot of music when I'm sleeping. So I wake up and I'm like, oh, gotta get the voice recorder. It's 4 a.m. It's that time, So like my voice recordings are just a bunch of garbled shit that I'm mumbling at 4:30 in the morning, so I don't forget. And I can just never really remember or place it. I definitely think if I heard it again, I would recognize it. But it's like it really bothers me.
Oh, that would drive me mad though, trying to find out.
Yeah.
That would make me crazy. There was a song I heard on the radio 25 years ago, and the DJ never said what it was, and I've never heard the song again to this day.
Oh, no.
But I remember the one time I heard it, I'm like, this is a great song.
Right.
No idea. No idea. It plagues me that I will never know.
Still bothers you.
It's like the earworm that just won't disappear ever.
Just the never died.
It's always going to be there.
I've got a weird ghost story that my daughter wants me to bring up. I used to live, Matt said I lived in a place, and we've talked about before in Peace Valley, that had a lot of weird activity happening there, but this was recent. I was outside with my daughter. We have the screened-in porch on the side of the house. I've got a little bar set up out there. Wasn't drinking or anything because it was a school night, and just sitting outside and looking out the window. She's talking to me, and I Googled what this is and tried to look up what it is, but I witnessed what they refer to as an apportation. Okay. So something moving.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of teleporting from one place to another.
Oh.
We both witnessed this, and it's really, if I would have seen this on my own, I would never say anything about it probably to anybody, but we both saw it. She's talking to me, and there's a bar there, and there's also kind of like a pub table off to the side for other guests to sit at. She's walking by that pub table, and she has a pen in her hand. She's an artist. She's always drawing. And she sets the pen up on the table. I watch her kind of toss the pen on the table. Doesn't go very far, just gently tosses it up there. Walks away for about 10 seconds, and I'm looking out the side window at this tree and, just the scenery of the neighborhood. And I see probably about 8 or 10 seconds later after she walks away from this table, I see something drop from the ceiling really fast and clack, 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 clatter on the floor. She's turning her head around about the same time, and she said, "What was that?" And I said, "I don't know. What was that?" And I was looking right in the direction of where it fell and saw where it fell from, and looks like it came right out of the ceiling, landed on the floor, and saw it roll across the floor. She went over and picked it up. It was the pen that she had set on the table about 10 seconds earlier. Now, no, Matt's brother, did you feel any cold? Did you see a flashlight? It's like, no, it wasn't like Poltergeist where they've got, the big ring of light.
Right.
No skeleton came out and anything. It was the oddest thing, though, because I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes drop right in front of my eyes, fall and hit the floor after it had been laying. Now, I never saw it leave the table. I never saw it disappear.
Right.
Because, it's like you say, when you heard the music, I didn't think anything of it when she sat at table. It's not like when somebody puts a pen on a table, you're thinking, I better keep an eye on that thing.
Unless you're Zach Bagan, then
Right.
you're keeping an eye on it all.
Yeah. So, but yeah, definitely saw it. It was the same color, shape, everything. It was that pen.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit the floor, and the oddest thing. And we tried to recreate it. Like we were out there bouncing the pen as hard as we could on the table, see if it would hit the ceiling and stick.
Yep.
Nothing. We couldn't make it. And she picks up the pen. She says, "Look, Dad, it's called an anti-gravity flight pen." I was like, oh, it's pretty funny. Maybe it's a ghost of the sense of humor.
I like that.
But yeah, that's my latest weird thing I've witnessed.
Yep.
I don't know. Matt, you got anything recent or anything we haven't talked about in the show before? Because we talk about this stuff a lot.
Yeah, we just talked about a bunch of them.
Mm.
Okay, so here's one I don't think I've shared yet, and it's kind of, I wasn't directly there for it, but this is still, I believe it. So I've talked about growing up in a house that was haunted.
Uh-huh.
And at one point when I was like 16, 17, everybody that was living in the house, my family moved to another house, and my aunt who lived in the house, her house had died. So it was just like the family had the house and it was sitting empty for a while.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which if you're like a, 16, 17-year-old kid, you're going to fucking break into the haunted house and take your friends. You're just going to.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I did this, and I would, come see my haunted house. And of course, my friends would want to come. and I had several experiences in there of my own with like hearing somebody call my name when I was, really little. I would, Matt, and there would be nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I had a bathroom ghost, the quick version. It would open and close the door to the bathroom anytime I was in there. If I would say, please close the door, it would close, and it was weird. And a couple other things that happened in there, but this one I wasn't there for. So I had shown my friends the house, and of course I had a pair of friends who were a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And they had decided, well, this is convenient. Matt showed us how to break into this house. Right. So let's go on our own.
Wow.
Right. So they did.
Yeah.
And I got this story secondhand from a mutual friend who said that they were just like really freaked out and afraid to tell me. And I believe that. So apparently they'd broken the house and they were starting to mess around. And every time they like got to a certain point, there were like bell alarms, crazy lights flashing everywhere, just like pandemonium breaks out.
Ooh.
So they were like, oh my God, the police are here, right? We're in trouble. And they stop, and then it stops. And they run to the window, look around outside, just waiting to see like the cops ready to arrest them. And there's nothing there.
Oh.
So then they're like, okay, I don't know what that was. But they try and go back to what they were doing. Starts all over again. Wah, wah, wee, doo, dee, doo. Lights flashing.
That's great.
That is crazy.
And they like panic and like run out of the house. Never go back again. Not long after this, I'd snuck into the house again. I wasn't doing anything like that. I didn't have a girlfriend, so that
puts a damper on things too.
But I found... And I was really glad that like my family weren't the ones that found it, because I knew who would it come back to. But I found like this condom laying on the floor.
Oh, nice.
And the room that they said that they were in. And it was clear that like they weren't finished using it, but it was unrolled. So like they left in a hurry.
Jeez.
And like really freaked out.
Yeah. I guess so.
And they didn't want to tell me, but they told like a mutual friend, and he was like, they were really freaked out. And I was like, wow. And and I'm like, well, I had shit happen in that house. I kind of buy it. But that's the noises and the sounds and things like that.
Was that the house by the cemetery?
No.
I
did have something happen there once.
Yeah.
And this was kind of weird in that house. I forgot about that.
Your brother did too.
Yeah, we lived next to the cemetery, but this was the one behind the bowling alley.
Uh-huh.
That's like the tire shop now. They tore it down and built the tire shop.
Yeah, I remember that one too. Yeah.
But this one, I lived across the street from a cemetery.
Uh-huh.
Nothing really happened there except for one night. Or one morning, actually, I was laying in bed and I was supposed to be getting up. And by the way, my dad died when I was pretty young. He was buried in the cemetery across the street. It was like literally maybe 50 yards from my house that he was buried. Whether that has anything to do with it or not, I don't know. But there was one morning that I was supposed to be getting out of bed and I wasn't getting out of bed. And I swear I felt somebody slap me in the face. Not like a really like mean slap, but a get the fuck up slap.
Uh-huh.
Right? You need to wake up. And I jump up and I look around and there's nothing. Nobody there. Right? My brother was actually in his bed asleep, but there's no way. We had like really loud, squeaky beds. There was no way he could move that quickly and quietly, pull up the covers.
Yeah.
Right? Impossible.
No.
Wow.
Right, so I have no idea, but somebody slapped me in the face that morning. And I just kind of assumed that it was like, you know what? That's just my dad saying, get the fuck up. I don't know.
Well, and to be clear, I've never experienced anything else like that in this house. Anything I don't have any. I'm not somebody who's like prone to a lot of experiences.
The haunted CPAP, I told you about that too.
Yeah. I still think that was a malfunction, but I don't know.
I want to think it was. So I have apnea. I just like was born with gigantic tonsils. So, and I probably should have had them removed when I was a kid.
It's true.
It is true. Like every time I go to see a doctor, they look at my tonsils.
And you were worried about oversharing.
Yeah, I know. They go to look at my tonsils and they want to prescribe me like something because they're afraid I have strep throat. And I'm like, no, I just have giant tonsils.
Oh my God.
I just have big tonsils.
They're always like that. You know what they say about a man and his size of his tonsils. I have a CPAP, and right after my kid was born, and this machine that I was using, it had never done that before. Like right after my kid was born, and we had moved into this new house, which ended up being neighbors with John at one point for a while in that house. But I would slip on my mask at night, and it would just automatically turn on. And a lot of them do that anyway, right? It's just a thing that they do.
The newer ones, yeah.
But this one was not one that did that, but it would just automatically turn on as soon as I slipped my mask on. And I even thought, like John was saying, okay, it could be a weird thing going on with the machine. You know, maybe my breathing's
pressures.
Right, changing the pressure and it's doing it. So I would like experiment and I would like slip on the mask and hold my breath just to make sure that pressure's not changing, nothing's happening with any of it. And it would still click on whenever I would put on the mask. And this happened pretty consistently, like every time I would put on my mask. And it never happened before that. And then there was like this episode where I got in like an argument and it got kind of ugly. And like it stopped doing that. And I've read like spirits or whatever entities can be attracted to like the energy of like a newborn. So maybe like that was something that was going on and it thought it was okay. And then after that fight though, that never happened again.
That's weird.
So like negative energy can drive it off. Like that was like a very negative energy night.
Fascinating. We'll
go with that theory.
I don't know what to think of it.
I don't either. It's undetermined.
It is.
What's the latest thing you're researching, working on?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
What was I doing? What was I working on?
Before, you had to deal with all that you're dealing with.
Before the whole divorce thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The last thing I worked on was, the Bennington Triangle is something I've been researching.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Tell us more.
Very interesting. I am looking at this hodgepodge of notes I have here. Eventually, this will be a very cool episode.
Uh-huh.
It's
like Vermont, right?
Yeah, it's in Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
It's like near the Glastonbury Mountain
Mm-hmm.
is like one of the kind of points of interest. But there's this like ghost town of Glastonbury, which was like this small logging community in southwestern Vermont in the mountains that was abandoned at the end of the 19th century after kind of the logging boom died away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of considered this ghost town because it's been mostly untouched.
Mm-hmm.
No one lives there now. No one hasn't been, destroyed in any way. It's pretty remote. People think that there's that has something to do with some of these disappearances that have been going on.
Mm-hmm.
But 70 years ago, missing persons cases in this area multiplied pretty significantly to where people were like, there's something fishy going on. And this town is sort of at the center of a lot of those disappearances, as well as some unsolved murders,
Mm-hmm.
and so what they call bizarre sightings. But yeah, there've been a number of disappearances. I have 3 from the 40s, a couple from the 50s written down. People just disappearing around the same area, very mysteriously, kind of in the woods of Glastonbury around that town. Some people think it's like a serial killer because they all are, there's this cluster of disappearances kind of in the late 40s, early 50s. Only one body's been recovered. So, everyone else is still kind of considered missing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real link between victims. There's not really a pattern, but some people are like, well, it could just be one of these random killers. I'm like, how many of those are?
Right.
Because, there's this wild speculation about how many active serial killers do you think there are in the United States right now? And it's like, I don't want to think about
too
that.
many. I don't know.
One is too many.
Yeah.
So some people like to get on that serial killer train of thinking, oh, these weird disappearances, maybe it's a serial killer.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been there?
I have not southwestern Vermont.
Okay.
I've been to northern Vermont.
Okay. So we're in the clear DNA wise.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
I think from what I read about that particular town too is impossible to get to. I mean, there's no roads in or out in.
It's really remote.
Is the same ones way up the mountain and you have to hike to actually get there? You can't just drive up to the town and check it out because everything's been washed away and
yeah. So it's kind of, if you're out in the woods, it's pretty easy to get lost, even for people, because I've read about and listened about these cases where even seasoned hikers and people really familiar with areas go missing or get lost, and it's not unheard of that can happen. So especially in some places remote as this, and the Vermont woods are just dense, and I don't particularly have a burning desire to go there.
Go there and research it.
I would get lost. I would definitely get lost.
Yeah.
Oh, my cat has decided to join me up here. Hi.
Mine are real bad at sitting on the keyboard when I'm trying to work.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's only when they know that you're trying to do something.
Right.
Because I'll be sitting here, dicking around on the internet, whatever, and they leave me alone. And then they're like, you look like you're trying to be productive. Let me mess it up.
Right.
It's just, he's half demon.
They're trying to help you. You look really intense and you need to relax.
Right.
I'm going to help you.
Let me climb on your back and claw you. That's relaxing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shit. Get off me. God, he's so... I love him, but man, he's annoying.
I'm looking around for mine now.
Along with the deep woods kind of stuff, there's local wildlife that could be getting people. There's lynx and bobcats, catamounts, which are scary.
Yeah.
That people think, they aren't necessarily known for being super aggressive toward humans, but
right.
And the catamount hasn't even been spotted there since before these disappearances. So people, it's effectively extinct. We haven't seen it since then. People think it's extinct. It might not be, but
it's hanging out with Bigfoot.
Probably not a good guess. Of course, there's always, the weirdos who think that it's not that they're weirdos, but people who are a little bit further out there with their imaginations who think that aliens have abducted people there. Which I have my own history with.
Alien abduction?
With that topic. That's just, it's like a family affair.
Wow. We love talking aliens. We've had MUFON people on.
Yeah, Tom Whitmore has been on a couple of times from MUFON, one of the directors. He's a good guy to report your story to as well, by the way.
It's already, and it was published. And
oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Whenever it happened. I was, what was I, like 5 or? Yeah. So my uncle was a pilot in the Air Force. And he had some experiences while doing that in like the 60s, I guess it was, 70s. And he got really into, ow, Bobby, Jesus. Jesus Christ. He
scared me.
Straight up claw to the leg. Oh my God. Blue for real. For sure. Go for me.
You're saying too much.
Oh my God. He's like, shut up.
Right.
Shut up, woman.
Your cat's actually an alien. What is it, the Flurkin?
Honestly, he might be. He might be a demon alien hybrid. He's just really out for literal blood tonight. I think I'm bleeding.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So my uncle had these experiences, and then he got into like the societies and, like trying to, find other people who had similar experiences and subscribe to like those newsletters that they would put out like in the 80s and stuff and 90s. About like UFO research and experiences and stuff. So there's like an article that was written about me.
Wow.
I think that he had like my mom told him, and I think he relayed it to the whoever wrote it, or he wrote it. I don't think my mom wrote it, but I don't think she still has a copy, but I've seen it. I read it. And that was like early 90s. It would have been. And then there's this book that I can't remember what it was about the book. I think it was that someone had a very similar experience to mine. And it ended up in this book. I don't know. It's been a while since all of that. But my mom kept really good records of stuff. She would like write down everything I was saying. Because apparently I was saying some off the wall shit. For a 5-year-old, I was having these like real crazy dreams that she didn't think were dreams at one point. It's like, maybe you should invest in another baby monitor.
Wow.
Yeah, really weird. I don't remember a lot of it. I remember some of it, but I was pretty young.
What was the gist of the, unless you're not comfortable talking about it, but.
I mean, from what I personally remember, I only really remember it as a dream. But it was like, I was with my friends and we were in the woods, of course. And we had to swim across this mud pit to get to the safety of the dock. I don't know what we were running away from. But I was the slowest because, I'm not very physically proficient. So I was lagging behind everyone and my friend was screaming for me, like, hurry up, hurry up.
That's how it is in dreams, though, too.
Yeah.
Like my legs always go weak in dreams if I'm trying to run. I
was like having a hard time swimming, and then this like pig came up out of the mud and bit my ankle really hard. It really hurt. And I woke up and I went screaming to my mom and jumped in bed, and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "It bit me. It bit me." And there were these like 2 puncture holes on my leg.
Oh, weird.
That were like way bigger than like, it wasn't a spider. It wasn't like, she checked my room for bugs and all this stuff. And it didn't look like anything like an animal that we had ever heard of. And I was like in my room. It was not like I was camping or something. So it was like really strange.
Yeah.
And then there were these like lights. This one time I was awake. I guess it was the middle of the night and I couldn't sleep. And it almost looked like the reflection of like a stoplight, like the red and yellow flashing and green. It was all 3 kind of like on at the top of where the wall meets the ceiling. And I was kind of just watching them it was kind of hypnotizing almost, just watching them up there flashing and like kind of dancing around.
Huh.
And we didn't live near a stoplight or anything. There were no stoplights anywhere near us. It's kind of a little neighborhoody, just stop signs and streetlights, but none of them were malfunctioning and none of them were colored.
Huh.
And I didn't have any night lights or anything that did that. And my room was usually really dark because I liked it really dark. So I'm just watching these flash and like kind of like dance around. I was like not bothered by it until they like moved from the wall onto the bed. And I was like, nope. And I ran down the hall to my parents' room and they chased me, these little lights.
Whoa.
And it was just like two of them just chasing me all the way into her room. My mom said she saw them, but then they disappeared.
Wow.
And she's like, if I didn't see them, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But she said I was like terrified. Really weird shit.
Wild.
There was some other stuff that I don't personally have memories about, but like she wrote it all down. So I don't think she made it up. I don't know.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah. Like I would talk about being like on a ship or something. That's like crazy shit for a 5-year-old to be like, oh yeah, it's fine. You know, they took me out there and they poked me with some stuff. I'm fine though. It's like, what? Excuse me?
That is weird.
Yeah.
You ever thought about being like hypnotized to...
Not really. It's sort of one of those things like don't ask questions you don't want the answer to.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right. Well, and hypnotism doesn't work if you're not really comfortable.
Yeah, I don't think I want to know.
Yeah.
That's kind of telling in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. It brings me kind of like this weird feeling of like dread.
Yeah.
Even though it was a long time ago.
Right. Don't open that door.
I'm like, nope, we're going to leave that shut. And, you know, my brother and I guess he had also had some experiences and he's older than me. So he could verbalize them a little bit better. But we both ended up with some like really weird health issues like around that time. It was right around the same time. And we both kind of had these, I don't know. And we never really figured out what the cause was.
Wow.
But the symptoms were really strange. They called it like food allergies, but it wasn't really consistent with like an allergic reaction that I know of.
That's crazy.
It's really, yeah. And we had like really high levels of like metals in our system. Really kind of fucking weird shit.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah. Yeah. So my parents were pretty like freaked out by all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably would be. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're going to have to come back on. This sounds like we just opened up a whole new chapter.
Wanted to talk reincarnation, and I still really want to talk about that, but I know that would take a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's one that interests me too. But yeah, I listened to your episode on what was that, the Pollock sisters, and boy, yeah, that was disturbing stuff.
Yeah, a lot of those stories are just really heavy, you know, and it's like I can't even imagine being the parent.
Oh, I know.
Having to listen to that.
Right.
Or some of the study that, what was it, Stevens? University of Virginia.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I kind of did a deep dive in that, and I'm like, that's some weird ass shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's fascinating.
Really? Yeah. That would be a really good movie.
It would. Yeah.
Just that dude's story.
Yeah, it would. Be a good biopic. I'd watch it.
I would too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to more episodes.
Well, we will definitely invite you back.
Yes. Yeah.
Yay.
You can do that and save yourself the production work. Let Matt do it all.
Right? This is the easy part. Just talk.
It's the easy way to do it. Yeah. just do a mashup, meet up every once in a while. It was an honor.
Absolutely.
Loved having you on. It was a good time.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
You should get us out.
Letter to the outro?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That'd be fun because, you know, the name and stuff.
Okay, cool. Get my podcast voice on. You've been listening to Undetermined, the podcast.
Awesome.
Yes.
Real profesh.
Dr. N, thanks for coming on. We had a really good time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye-bye. Stay safe.